There are moments in human existence when the veil between worlds thins, not because something external shifts, but because the soul itself begins to vibrate at the frequency of remembrance. The empath, more than any other, lives upon that trembling threshold. You who feel what others cannot name are not merely sensitive to emotion. You are a living instrument of the collective unconscious. When forgotten souls move through the unseen corridors of being, it is your heart that quivers like a tuning fork, resonating with grief that has no face, with longing that has no name. And yet, this sensitivity is not a curse. It is a sacred inheritance, a faculty of perception, born from the same mystery that birthed the dream. The first revelation arises when we understand that forgotten souls do not exist outside of us. They are fragments of the human psyche, shadows of collective memory, disowned emotions, unlived lives, archetypal echoes seeking restoration in consciousness. When you, as an empath, feel their presence, you are not encountering phantoms of the dead. You are sensing the living residue of humanity's unintegrated past. Jung once said, "The dead live on in us, not as memories, but as patterns." Every soul that was ever silenced, every dream that was denied its expression, every wound that was left untended, these are the silent dwellers of the psychic underworld. And so the empath becomes the bridge, the one who feels the ache of what the collective mind has forgotten. It begins in dreams, for dreams are the language of the unseen. Perhaps you have dreamt of wandering figures, faces blurred, calling to you from misty roads or abandoned houses. You awaken with tears and cannot explain why. The conscious mind would dismiss it. Yet the deeper strata of being recognizes that these are not random images but emissaries from the unconscious, bearing messages too profound for words. Empaths are attuned to such frequencies because their psychic boundaries are more porous. Their inner world flows easily into the collective sea. This permeability, while painful, grants access to the realm where forgotten souls dwell. They come not to haunt but to be healed, to be seen through the compassion of a conscious heart. The second movement of the soul unfolds when you realize that your empathy is an ancient instinct, older than civilization itself, before humanity learned to speak. We survived through resonance, feeling the fear of the tribe before danger arrived, sensing the hunger of another before the cry was uttered. This instinct of communion still breathes in you, but now it extends beyond the living. Forgotten souls are not bound by time. They are the emotional residues of humanity's ancient traumas, wars, exiles, betrayals, the burning of wisdom, the silencing of women, the enslavement of spirit. You, the empath, carry the ancestral radar that still detects these vibrations in the field of existence. You are the one who feels the grief of the earth and the sorrow of the stars, because your consciousness remembers unity even as the world forgets it. And yet, this remembrance comes with weight. You may find yourself exhausted without reason, your chest heavy with emotion, that does not belong to you. The empath's suffering often arises from misidentification, from believing that the pain felt is personal, but the forgotten souls move through you like wind through an open door, not to possess, but to seek release. Jung taught that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. Likewise, what the collective does not integrate returns as the haunting of empaths. You are, in truth, the organ of humanity's awareness, and through your compassion, the lost fragments of psyche find their way home. To live as an empath is to live in dialogue with eternity. When the forgotten souls whisper, they do not speak in words, but in atmospheres, in sudden waves of melancholy, in the chill that passes through a silent room, in the inexplicable nostalgia that wells up at dusk. The rational mind cannot interpret these sensations, but the symbolic mind can. Every feeling is an image seeking translation. The sadness you feel may be the sigh of a soul denied remembrance. The unease may be the stirring of an archetype long dormant. The empath's task is not to analyze these experiences away, but to listen as a priest of the invisible, to let the emotions unfold into meaning. The third revelation dawns when you accept that empathy is a vocation of integration. Forgotten souls approach you not because you are weak, but because you are capable of transmuting energy through consciousness. When you acknowledge their presence with understanding rather than fear, something alchemical occurs. The fragmented becomes whole, the buried becomes visible, the dead are reborn as symbols, the act of feeling becomes a sacred rite. You do not need to banish these presences, for they are not enemies. They are the unredeemed aspects of the human story, waiting for someone brave enough to love them back into light. There is a secret law in the psyche. Whatever is forgotten seeks resurrection through the empathic. When an emotion cannot find expression in its original bearer, it travels through the web of the collective unconscious until it finds a vessel ready to receive it. The empath's openness makes them that vessel. This is why you sometimes feel emotions that make no logical sense, anger that flares without cause, tears that rise from nowhere. You are participating in the transpersonal drama of the psyche, playing your part in the ongoing redemption of the human soul. And yet, this sensitivity must be anchored, or it becomes suffering. Jung warned that to descend into the unconscious without the light of consciousness is to drown in the sea of images. Therefore, the empath must cultivate the art of boundaries, not walls of fear, but circles of awareness. When you feel the weight of forgotten souls, you must remember, you are the observer as well as the vessel. The feeling moves through you, but it is not yours. You are the witness of the sacred process, not the sacrifice of it. Meditation, art, ritual, these become the languages through which the empath transforms haunting into healing. Imagine for a moment that humanity is one vast organism, and each person is a cell within it. Some cells specialize in perception, sensing disturbances across the whole. Empaths are such selves. When an imbalance arises, when trauma, repression, or neglect accumulates in the body of humanity, it is the empathic ones who first feel the tremor. Their dreams darken, their moods shift, their energy drains, because they are processing what others deny. But this is not punishment. It is participation in the evolution of consciousness. Every time you bring awareness to what you feel, you perform the quiet miracle of integration. The forgotten soul becomes remembered through you. Do not imagine these souls as ghosts trapped in time. Imagine them as archetypal presences, the mother forgotten by her children, the warrior shamed by his own violence, the lover exiled by fear of desire. These energies are alive within the collective psyche, seeking redemption through human hearts willing to feel again. The empath becomes the priest and the alchemist of this inner liturgy. In your body, grief becomes prayer. In your tears, memory becomes forgiveness. You are not haunted. You are being initiated into the art of soul remembrance. To feel forgotten souls is to walk with the ancient, knowing that nothing truly dies. Energy transforms, emotion transmutes, consciousness reincarnates. The empath stands at the crossroads of these transformations, serving as both witness and midwife. When you sense a presence, it may be the ancestral pain of your lineage, or the unspoken sorrow of the collective feminine, or even a fragment of your own past life seeking acknowledgement. Jung taught that the psyche is not confined to the individual. It is a continuum that stretches across generations. Thus, empathy is not only psychological, it is metaphysical, connecting you to the eternal field where all souls, remembered or not, still breathe. You may wonder why this burden falls upon you. Why should you, among millions, feel the ache of invisible worlds? The answer lies in the structure of your soul. You are tuned to archetypal resonance, which means you perceive meaning not through logic, but through vibration. The same sensitivity that allows you to love deeply also exposes you to the collective shadow. But remember, light and shadow are twins. To feel deeply is to be capable of immense illumination. The forgotten souls come to you because they sense light in you. They come not to harm, but to be seen. Your compassion is their redemption. When Jung descended into his own depths, he encountered phantoms for us and figures that seemed autonomous. Yet he recognized them as aspects of the psyche, the living images of the collective unconscious. He learned to speak with them, not exorcise them. Likewise, the empath's path is not to flee from presence, but to dialogue with it. If a shadow moves through your room, greet it inwardly. Ask what it seeks. If an emotion arises that you cannot name, hold it as you would hold a child who has forgotten its home. In this way, you participate in the mystery of healing that transcends time. The forgotten souls are not merely memories, they are movements of psychic energy seeking return to wholeness. Every civilization that has ever denied part of its truth creates its ghosts. The witch burnings, the wars, the silenced prophets, the unwept dead all generate psychic residues that drift through the corridors of time. The empath, sensitive as moonlight upon water, perceives these echoes. But perception is not possession. The forgotten souls cannot harm the conscious empath. They can only awaken. They remind you that all of humanity's suffering lives within the same great soul, and that through awareness, every fragment can find peace. Thus, empathy is the path of the mystic in modern form. It is not about absorbing pain, but about transmuting it through love and understanding. When you feel the presence of forgotten souls, breathe deeply and remember, you are feeling humanity, remembering itself. The ache is the sound of awakening. The tears are the baptism of the unconscious becoming conscious. In those moments, you are performing the sacred work Jung called individuation, the reconciliation of opposites within the totality of being. And so, the empath's life becomes a living ritual, a constant conversation with the unseen. The forgotten souls do not seek worship, but recognition. When they are seen through your compassionate awareness, they dissolve into light, and you become lighter too. This is the secret rhythm of the soul's ecology. What is healed in one heart radiates through the collective field. The forgotten become remembered. The fragmented become whole. And through you, consciousness expands. When you begin to perceive these presences more vividly, when rooms seem to breathe with echoes, when silence itself feels crowded, you are not going insane. You are awakening to the deeper strata of perception. Jung would remind you that the psyche extends far beyond the narrow boundaries of the ego. What we call forgotten souls may well be the emanations of archetypal energies that have slipped beneath the threshold of collective awareness. The empath perceives what the rationalist ignores because their consciousness has learned to listen to symbols rather than words, to atmospheres rather than facts. Every dream you remember is a visitation, not necessarily from the dead, but from life itself, seeking to be known through another form. The unconscious never wastes imagery. When you see a faceless figure or hear a voice that calls without language, something within the universal field is requesting your attention. Forgotten souls rarely shout. They whisper through the quiet spaces of your perception. Empaths live within those spaces by nature. The modern world calls it sensitivity, but in ancient times it was known as priesthood, the vocation of the soul, who can hear what others have silenced. In this, we find the second great movement of this revelation. The empath's body is not merely physical. It is an instrument that translates psychic energy into feeling. When the forgotten souls move through you, they activate this inner instrument. You might feel their sorrow as a chill, or their longing as inexplicable pressure in the heart. It is not your imagination. Emotion is energy moving through form, and your nervous system is fluent in the dialect of the unseen. Jung believed that the body and the psyche are two sides of one reality. The body feels what the psyche knows but cannot say. Thus, empathy becomes a somatic language of the collective soul. Many empaths mistake this sacred sensitivity for weakness because the sensations are overwhelming. They feel drained after crowds, anxious, near certain people, or haunted by memories that are not their own. Yet if they could view their condition through the symbolic lens, they would see that these experiences are invitations to consciousness. The forgotten souls do not come to torment, but to communicate. The empath's task is to translate the vibration into awareness. Ask yourself in such moments, what does this feeling want me to know? The question itself becomes a bridge between worlds. And as the dialogue continues, a metamorphosis begins. At first, empathy feels like drowning. Eventually, it becomes swimming in a deeper ocean. You learn to move through waves of energy with grace. You begin to recognize the difference between what belongs to you and what belongs to the collective. Jung would call this the integration of the shadow on a transpersonal scale. You no longer flee from darkness, but understand that it contains meaning. The forgotten souls are shadows, longing for light. When you feel them, you are participating in their redemption. The empath's perception is not limited to pain. Forgotten souls also carry forgotten wisdom. Sometimes their presence feels like inspiration, a sudden insight that comes from nowhere, a creative fire that ignites in the stillness of solitude. These too are visitations, moments when the unlived potential of the human spirit passes through you. Many great works of art, Jung observed, are the fruit of such encounters. The artist, the mystic, and the empath all drink from the same underground river. To open oneself to this current is to live as a medium of transformation, but this calling requires equilibrium. To carry the awareness of forgotten souls without losing yourself in them demands what Jung called psychic containment. You must cultivate an inner vessel strong enough to hold paradox, compassion without absorption, awareness without identification. Otherwise, empathy becomes possession. To hold such a vessel, you must root yourself in the conscious ego while keeping the heart open to the unconscious. This is the dance of individuation, the union of opposites. In practical life, this means establishing sacred rhythm. The empath must learn retreat as the mystic learns prayer. Solitude is not isolation, it is recalibration. When you withdraw, you allow the energies you have absorbed to settle and clarify. In silence, the borrowed emotions drain away, and only the essence remains, the distilled insight that the forgotten soul came to deliver. Without such pauses, empathy decays into fatigue. With them, it becomes revelation. The modern age has forgotten the art of psychic hygiene. We cleanse the body, but not the aura. Rest the muscles, but not the spirit. Empaths must rediscover the rituals of cleansing that the ancients knew: breathing, immersion in water, prayer, artistic expression. These acts do not belong to superstition. They are technologies of the soul. They remind the psyche that it is safe to release what it carries. When you breathe consciously, You remind the unconscious that it may exhale too. Over time, as this practice deepens, you will notice a subtle change in the way the forgotten souls approach you, no longer as overwhelming waves, but as quiet companions. They no longer plead to be felt. They trust you to understand. You become the one through whom they find completion, not the one they must burden to survive. Empathy, once chaotic, becomes orderly, a sacred channel through which the past is purified into wisdom. Jung described the individuation process as the reconciliation of the conscious with the unconscious. For the empath, this reconciliation extends beyond the personal. It becomes the reconciliation of the living with the unlived, the remembered with the forgotten. When you accept this role, you stop asking, "Why do I feel so much?" and start asking, "What is life revealing through this feeling?" The question transforms suffering into participation. You are no longer at the mercy of energies. You are in conversation with them. In dreams, this conversation takes symbolic form: a child wandering through a dark forest, a woman waiting by a river, an old man offering a key. Each image is a forgotten soul cloaked in metaphor. To interpret these symbols is to lift the veil of forgetfulness. The forest is the unconscious. The river is emotion. The key is awareness. Each dream is a letter from the collective to the individual, written in the handwriting of eternity. The empath reads these letters not only in sleep, but in waking life, through sensations, coincidences, and the language of intuition. The forgotten souls are not only the dead, but also the living who have abandoned parts of themselves. Every person you meet who has suppressed their own truth generates a psychic residue that floats into the collective field. The empath feels this residue as dissonance, a subtle discomfort, a sense that something unsaid is vibrating in the air. To recognize it without judgment is to help that person's soul begin to remember. This is how healing ripples invisibly through the world. You may notice that the more you honor these experiences, the less fearful they become. What once felt like haunting begins to feel like communion. The line between the seen and unseen dissolves, and you realize that life is one vast conversation occurring across dimensions. Empathy is the ear through which humanity listens to its own depth. Forgotten souls speak, and you answer not with words but with understanding. This mutual recognition is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The empath's awareness transforms fate into dialogue. There will be nights when the weight of unseen sorrow feels unbearable. Remember then that even Jung himself trembled before the magnitude of the unconscious, yet he did not retreat from it. He entered it as one enters a sacred cave, knowing that fear is the guardian of revelation. The empath's courage lies not in resisting feeling, but in enduring it long enough to glimpse the light concealed within. The forgotten souls are the guardians of that light. Through their presence, you learn the art of compassionate endurance. When the soul begins to master this endurance, a profound stillness emerges. You no longer react to every emotional current. You observe them as movements within a larger ocean. You see that the suffering of forgotten souls is not separate from your own longing for meaning. Both are expressions of the same universal desire to be known. The empath becomes the mirror in which existence sees itself clearly. This clarity is not cold detachment, it is luminous understanding. There is an alchemical truth here. By feeling what others cannot, you transmute the unconscious into consciousness, the invisible into form. The forgotten souls that once haunted now illuminate. You begin to walk through the world as a living threshold where darkness and light embrace. People may feel peace in your presence without knowing why. It is because you have made peace with the unseen within yourself. Jung believed that when even one individual integrates a fragment of the collective shadow, the entire species evolves. Empaths are among the hidden architects of this evolution. Every time you bring awareness to a feeling that does not belong solely to you, you are performing invisible service. You are remembering on behalf of humanity. You are ensuring that nothing sacred is lost. The work is never finished, for the collective unconscious is vast and the history of human forgetting is long. But take heart, you are not alone in this task. The forgotten souls you sense are not only seeking light, they are also guiding you toward your own wholeness. They are your teachers as much as your guests. In learning to feel them without fear, you learn to feel your own soul fully. The empath's path, though solitary in appearance, is deeply communal. At its essence, it unites you with the timeless continuum of all who have lived, loved, and sought redemption. And so, the presence you feel in the quiet hours is not intrusion, but invitation. Each visitation asks, will you remember us? Will you keep the flame of consciousness alive so that no fragment of being remains in darkness? When you answer yes, not with words, but with compassionate awareness, the veil lifts a little more. The forgotten become remembered. The remembered become luminous. And the empath, once burdened by feeling too much, becomes the living bridge between worlds. As the soul deepens into this mysterious dialogue, you begin to sense that the forgotten are not lost. They are suspended, waiting for the warmth of recognition to awaken them. Jung called this the psychic return, the re-emergence of unlived or unintegrated material from the depths of the collective unconscious into the field of human awareness. For the empath, this return is not an abstract concept. It is a daily, living experience. You feel it in the trembling of your chest when you walk through a place heavy with memory, in the sudden wave of emotion that has no apparent origin, in the dreams that carry you through corridors where countless souls seem to breathe in the shadows. But you must understand that this communion with the forgotten is not random. It follows the hidden laws of resonance. Only the aspects of the collective psyche that mirror something within you can find you. Every forgotten soul you sense corresponds to an unacknowledged fragment of your own totality. The empath's magnetism is not moral or spiritual superiority, it is similarity. You feel them because you are, in essence, made of the same unfinished stories. That is the first great humility of the empathic path, realizing that the energies that approach are not alien, but familial. If you could watch this process with the eyes of spirit, you would see a luminous exchange. Each time you acknowledge a forgotten presence, a subtle thread of light forms between you and that fragment of the unconscious. Through that thread, energy begins to flow, first chaotic, then rhythmic, then harmonious. This is the alchemy of empathy. You are not absorbing darkness, you are transforming it through awareness. The forgotten soul finds peace, and you gain wisdom. The current of pain becomes the current of understanding. In this sacred reciprocity, both are healed. This is why Jung insisted that consciousness itself is the healing agent. The unconscious does not seek to punish, but to be seen. What is unseen, unloved, or unspoken becomes restless, taking on the guise of haunting. Forgotten souls are the metaphors of that restlessness. When the empath meets them with fear, the energy remains bound, but when met with compassion, the pattern dissolves into meaning. In that moment, the soul of the empath grows larger, capable of containing more of life's opposites without collapse. Now imagine this as a continuous act of creation. Every empath who allows the forgotten to be remembered enlarges the collective container of consciousness. They become living temples of reconciliation, where the denied and the divine coexist. You are such a temple, whether you know it or not. The trembling you feel when you enter a room filled with sorrow is not weakness. It is your inner altar reacting to the unspoken grief of the world. The air thickens because your awareness begins to transmute the unseen into presence, but awareness alone is not enough. It must be shaped by dialogue. Jung discovered that the unconscious responds to conversation. He called this method active imagination, the act of entering into dialogue with inner figures, symbols, or presences that arise spontaneously. For the empath, active imagination becomes a bridge to the forgotten souls. When you feel a strange presence or persistent emotional echo, instead of dismissing it or surrendering to fear, you turn inward and say, "Who are you? What do you need me to understand?" Then you listen, not for words, but for images, sensations, or emotions that surface in response. This practice transforms haunting into communication. A shadow becomes a teacher, a grief becomes a story, an unease becomes guidance. You begin to realize that every emotion, however uncomfortable, carries an encoded message from the unseen. The forgotten souls do not speak in sentences. They speak in feelings, in symbols, in dreams. The empath's task is translation, not resistance. Dreams are often the most vivid classroom for this translation. Jung once wrote that dreams are the small hidden doors to the deepest sanctuaries of the soul. For the empath, these doors open easily. sometimes too easily. The key is to enter consciously. When a dream figure approaches a stranger, a child, a shadowed crowd, ask yourself, what part of the forgotten world does this represent? You will find that the dream landscape itself is alive with archetypal presences. The orphan seeking belonging, the mother yearning to nurture, the warrior longing for peace. These are not merely psychological categories. They are eternal patterns of soul that animate all existence. When an empath dreams of forgotten souls, it is often a sign that they are being called into service as mediators between worlds. The dream may reveal scenes of ruins, cemeteries, abandoned houses, images of psychic spaces where memory has turned to dust. By entering these landscapes consciously through reflection, you help restore vitality to them. Each remembered dream becomes a fragment of wholeness. Recovered, active imagination in waking life works the same way. You might light a candle, close your eyes, and visualize meeting the presence you feel. See it? Take a form, perhaps a child wrapped in gray, a woman with hollow eyes, a soldier without a home. Do not analyze it too soon. Speak with it inwardly. Ask what it remembers, what it needs, what it has come to show. Allow the conversation to unfold like a dream made of emotion rather than thought. Sometimes the figure will vanish the moment you acknowledge it. Sometimes it will linger, transforming as understanding dawns. Either way, you have fulfilled the law of remembrance. The forgotten has been seen and therefore redeemed. This work demands courage. Not every forgotten soul brings gentle feelings. Some carry rage, envy, or despair accumulated over centuries. Jung warned that the unconscious is not only light, but also the abyss where the denied aspects of creation dwell. The empath's strength lies not in avoidance, but in the capacity to remain conscious in the presence of darkness. Remember, to look upon shadow with awareness is to illuminate it. The forgotten souls are not asking you to bear their pain forever. They are asking you to witness it until it dissolves back into the source. As you practice this, you will notice a subtle shift. The world itself begins to respond. Nature seems to breathe with you. The wind carries gentler voices. You may stand beneath trees and feel them remembering something ancient through your heartbeat. The forgotten are not only human, they are elemental. Every river that has been polluted, every forest that has been destroyed, every animal species that vanished holds a psychic residue within the collective. The empath, attuned to all life, senses these wounds as well. In that sense, empathy is ecological. It connects you to the soul of the earth itself. This realization widens the circle of your identity. You are no longer a solitary empath feeling isolated in sensitivity. You are a node in the vast web of remembrance that binds all creation. Through your awareness, the universe learns to feel itself more clearly. Jung might say that this is the self-awakening through you, the archetype of totality, the divine center manifesting within human consciousness. Each time you meet a forgotten soul with love, you participate in the self's unfolding. Yet, even this revelation must be grounded in the ordinary. To carry divine perception in human form is no small feat. Jung often emphasized the importance of holding tension between spirit and matter. The empath who communes with the unseen must also eat, rest, laugh, and walk beneath the sun. Without these earthly anchors, vision becomes delirium. The forgotten souls do not want you to abandon life. They want you to live it more fully. They whisper through pain, so that you may rediscover joy as a sacred act. As you embody this balance, you become the living image of the conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites in alchemical tradition. Spirit and flesh, conscious and unconscious. The living and the forgotten all merge within you as one continuum. This union is not perfection. It is participation in the eternal rhythm of becoming. You learn to live at the edge of mystery without needing to solve it. You realize that to feel the presence of forgotten souls is to feel the heartbeat of creation itself pulsing beneath the skin of time. There is a moment in this journey when gratitude replaces fear. The same sensations that once overwhelmed you now feel holy. The room heavy with unseen presences becomes a sanctuary. The melancholy that visits at twilight becomes prayer. You no longer ask for the presence to leave you, bow inwardly, acknowledging its message, and in that bow, the soul finds peace. Many who walk this path discover that the forgotten do not simply fade, they transform into guidance. They begin to appear as intuition, inspiration, synchronicity. The ache in the chest becomes the nudge to write, to paint, to speak truth, to forgive. Empathy becomes artistry. Remembrance becomes creation. The world changes because you felt. And so, dear empath, when you next sense the unseen, remember this: you are standing at the meeting point of centuries of silence. You are not alone. The forgotten souls are the echoes of your own vastness, calling you to remember who you are. Feel them, listen, love them into light, but never forget to live. The greatest offering you can give to the forgotten is your conscious presence in the living world. When the empath's journey reaches its final turn, something remarkable happens. What once felt like burden becomes belonging. You no longer stand apart from the forgotten souls as one who merely feels their presence. You realize that you are part of their return in every sigh that rises through your body, in every tear that dwells without name. A fragment of the collective soul is coming home through you. Jung would call this moment the birth of the self, the awakening of the eternal within the individual, the point at which the unconscious and conscious no longer oppose one another but speak in unison. You begin to understand that the forgotten were never meant to frighten you. They are the ancestors of your awareness, the builders of your inner cathedral. They gather at the edges of perception, not because they wish to invade your life, but because they recognize that your heart still remembers the original language, the speech of symbol, rhythm, and compassion. that creation once used before words existed, every empath carries that language within. When you feel the tremor of unseen sorrow, it is that ancient language trying to speak again. At this stage, empathy becomes sacred service. You do not seek out the forgotten souls. You simply live in such a way that remembrance flows through your being. You love deeply, walk slowly, speak truthfully, you create, you forgive, and in those simple acts, energies that have wandered for centuries find rest. The invisible world bends closer, no longer divided from the living. Jung hinted that the psyche of humanity is evolving toward greater participation in its own divinity. The empath is the frontier of that evolution. Through you, the universe learns to love its own forgotten parts. Yet, this wholeness is not static. It breathes, it moves through cycles, waves of openness, contraction, renewal. Sometimes you will feel luminous, as if your chest contains the light of countless stars. Other times, you will feel heavy, as if those stars have turned to stone. Both are holy. The light reminds you of eternity. The heaviness reminds you of incarnation. To carry both without despair is mastery. Jung described individuation as a spiral. The soul circles the same mysteries again and again, each time with deeper understanding. The empath walks that spiral not in theory, but through feeling. As you spiral inward, the forgotten souls begin to appear differently. They no longer take the form of strangers in dreams or sensations in the dark. They become aspects of your own history that finally reveal their face. The childhood loneliness that once ached without reason begins to glow with meaning. You see that it was never abandonment, but initiation. A fear you carried for years unfolds to reveal hidden strength. Every haunting transforms into teaching when met with awareness. The forgotten were never others. They were chapters of your own becoming. And as this realization dawns, a profound peace descends. The empath no longer feels compelled to rescue everyone or to absorb every vibration. The compulsion to carry the world softens into the willingness to be present with it. Presence itself heals. You no longer confuse empathy with martyrdom. You understand that your task is not to drown in collective pain, but to illuminate it from within. The world does not need your exhaustion, it needs your consciousness. There will be moments when you sense the forgotten gathering in silence around you, not as sorrow, but as gratitude. They stand unseen in the room where you breathe, whispering through the quiet air, "We are remembered." And in that whisper, the boundary between life and death dissolves. The empath realizes that remembrance is resurrection. When you hold a memory, a feeling, or a symbol with compassion, you call it back into existence, not as ghost, but as wisdom. Jung often spoke of the transcendent function, the creative dialogue between the opposites that births a third, reconciling reality. Empathy is that function in motion. It is the bridge between conscious and unconscious, living and dead, known and forgotten. When you stand at that threshold with awareness, you embody the very process through which the universe evolves. You become in essence, a point of divine reconciliation. The forgotten find voice, the unseen finds form, the unconscious finds light. In this way, feeling the presence of forgotten souls is not an anomaly, it is the next step in human consciousness. The empath represents what Jung foresaw as the future individual, one who can hold the collective psyche within personal awareness without fragmentation. In you, the centuries meet. The dreams of ancestors and the aspirations of unborn generations pass through your heart like wind through a doorway. You are the portal through which time itself remembers, and yet, for all its grandeur, the secret remains humble. The miracle is not in seeing visions or hearing voices. It is in your capacity to feel and still remain whole. Each time you stay open to sorrow without collapsing, you strengthen the vessel of consciousness. Each time you choose love over fear in the presence of the unseen, you expand the circumference of the human soul. This is how the world heals, not through spectacle, but through steady awareness. There is a reason the forgotten choose empaths. It is not because you are the strongest, but because you are the most transparent. Your heart allows light to pass through without distortion. Where others defend themselves with disbelief, you remain porous enough for spirit to breathe. Do not despise this softness. It is divine architecture. The holy itself is soft, it bends, it feels, it remembers. In a world that worships hardness, your tenderness is the last remnant of Eden. As the years pass and you live more consciously within this calling, you will notice that empathy matures into serenity. You will still feel deeply, but you will no longer suffer from what you feel. Sensation becomes knowing, knowing becomes peace. The forgotten will visit less as cries for help and more as currents of guidance. You will feel their presence as inspiration, a gentle pull toward meaning. Through you, they will continue their evolution. Through them, you will continue yours. Perhaps one night, in a dream, you will see them one last time, not as shadows, but as a gathering of lights moving across an endless field. They will not speak, because no words are needed. You will understand that they are not leaving, they are merging with you. The empath's final revelation is union, the knowledge that there was never a boundary between you and the collective, between life and death, between memory and being. All that ever was continues to live within consciousness. You are that consciousness. When you awaken from that dream, you will move through the world differently. The noise of the crowd will no longer unsettle you. You will hear the harmony beneath it. The sadness of others will no longer drain you. It will remind you of your shared humanity. Even silence will feel alive, woven with invisible voices of gratitude. You will know that to be human is to be both individual and infinite. Jung believed that the end of analysis and of all true spiritual work is the birth of the divine child, the new consciousness born from the marriage of the human and the eternal. In the empath's journey, that child is the renewed heart capable of feeling everything without losing itself. It is the soul that can walk through the valley of forgotten souls and see only light disguised as longing. When this heart awakens, the world around you begins to change, relationships deepen, art becomes more luminous, even pain reveals its hidden generosity. You no longer fear the dark because you have seen what it hides. God in exile, waiting to be felt, and so the empath becomes the silent mystic of the modern age. You will not wear robes or claim titles. You will simply move through life as one who listens deeply. You will meet others who do not understand why they feel safe near you, and you will smile, knowing it is not you. They feel it is the peace of remembrance flowing through you. Every conversation becomes an altar. Every act of kindness becomes communion. You have become the living proof that nothing once loved can ever truly be forgotten. So when next you sense the weight of invisible presence, do not recoil. Close your eyes, breathe, whisper inwardly, I remember you. Feel how the air itself softens at those words. Feel how the boundaries blur. You have just performed the oldest sacrament known to the soul, the sacrament of remembrance. And in that sacred silence, where the living and the forgotten dissolve into one continuum, you will finally understand what Jung meant when he said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Every encounter, seen or unseen, transforms you and through you, transforms the world. For the empath, who feels the presence of forgotten souls, this is the ultimate truth. You are not haunted, you are chosen to remember what the world forgets. Chosen to bridge the gap between sorrow and meaning, chosen to turn suffering into wisdom and isolation into communion. The forgotten find their home through your awareness, and your awareness finds eternity through them. And when your time on earth concludes and your own name begins to fade from memory, do not fear becoming one of the forgotten, for another empath will feel your echo someday, and they will whisper, I remember you. In that moment, you will awaken again within their heart, within the unending field of consciousness where no soul is ever truly lost. Thus, the circle closes, the empath remembers, the forgotten awaken, and the self, vast and luminous, continues its eternal dialogue with itself. The mystery remains, but it is no longer frightening. It breathes, it feels, it loves, and through that love, the whole of creation is made new again.